Hey everybody, it's Robert coming to you with another adventure into history, and today we are down in Sumter County, Georgia, and we are at the old Benevolence Church down here, the old Benevolence United Methodist Church, but it's not Benevolence Church anymore. The Methodist congregation pulled out and the Methodist conference sold the building, and so it is under different ownership now, still being used as a church, but under a different congregation here. So this is actually my old family's church from many, many years ago. This is where my grandmother went to church, and her parents and her grandparents went to church here as well. And they all lived very close by to here. And recently I have been revisiting some of these places that are directly connected to my family. Now, the old Benevolence Church looks completely different. I never ever came here to attend services with my family. My mom never went to church here. But we did visit this place quite often to visit some relatives that are buried in the cemetery over here that we're going to take a look at and also clean in just a moment. And this is a historic cemetery, so we will take a look at it as well. But this is the old Benevolence Church. I remember it's changed a lot since I was a kid. It's got vinyl siding on it now, and it's under new ownership, like I said. The building looks relatively solid. I see some issues around some of the windows, and I absolutely hate the vinyl siding. But I am disturbed a little bit by some of the things that I've seen here in this cemetery. The cemetery does not look like it's receiving much maintenance at all. Surely this grass is cut right here, but none of the rest of the areas are receiving any kind of maintenance, it looks like. One of the things that bothers me the most is the new owners of this church moved a trailer back here, and this is probably either used as a parsonage or Sunday school, maybe. I'm not exactly sure what, but it is, for me, I believe it is far too close to the cemetery that is here. We can see this plot right here, and a lot of new burials in here, but there's also burials from 89, 72, 71, and so in other words, what I'm getting at is this. See, we've got 76 right there. This grave was here before this trailer was put here. And I don't believe that this trailer's sitting on any graves or anything like that, but in my opinion, it is uncomfortably close to the cemetery. It just, I don't know. I find it visually bothering. And I'm not here to judge what the new owners of this church choose to do, but I can say that I don't like it. And obviously there are still burials ongoing out here today. Another thing that really, really bothers me, and this one is hard for me not to pass judgment on, is the fact that there is a trash pile or burn pile right here just on the edge of the cemetery. And I don't feel like that is appropriate. I feel like there are other places on this property for such a trash pile than right beside the cemetery. And you may say, well, it's a good ways back from the graves, Robert. Why are you complaining about that? But it's not. I don't know whether this is sitting on any unmarked burials or not. I couldn't tell if it was because it's there. But right there is a grave. You can see it's marked. There's an indention there, and it's marked with bulb flowers, as we see so often. And that's really close. That is really close to this grave. I mean, you can see they're in the same frame right here. It's just, let's see, it's just a few feet away. Look at that. All right, walk, step, step, step. I'm here at the trash pile. So I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I feel like there were better places to put a trash pile. that's I guess going to be burned than right here in the little cemetery area. It bothers me. That is a grave there, and there are probably more unmarked graves in this area. We know how it is with old cemeteries, and I just feel like you should give cemeteries plenty of space. If it was just, trees being cut and tossed into the wood line, that would be one thing. Maybe I wouldn't look at it so harshly. But with all of the trash that's obviously headed towards a fire, I would assume, all those cardboard boxes over there and stuff, it just feels really out of place and a bit disrespectful to see this grave here and a trash pile there. Again, something that's not just natural vegetation, but the cardboard boxes and stuff. I don't think that it was done intentionally out of disrespect. I really don't believe it was. But that does not change the fact that I don't like it. Either one of these two things. They both feel like they're just encroaching on the cemetery. And I feel like that's reflected a bit with the fact that the cemetery feels unmaintained now. And maybe it was never really maintained, but it doesn't seem like the new owners or congregation in this church have the same care for this cemetery as maybe the old families that used to go here. And there are a lot of old families buried in this cemetery. And I can also understand that there's not the connection to the families buried here. The people who are buried here who used to attend this church back when it was the old Benevolence United Methodist Church, they're here still. And their descendants, I'm sure, are still around in this area. Well, such as myself, coming out here to visit this today. But the people who currently attend the church are majorly not related to the people that are buried in this cemetery, and that may be why they just simply don't have the same care for it. It's a little painful to see some of these things. Change in general is always painful for us to see as we go on. When I was a kid, church was totally different, and seeing some of these aspects of it really bother me. But we're here today not to pass judgment or complain. We're here today to visit the graves of my great-great-grandmother and my great-great-grandfather. And they're back here. They both have granite markers that are typical of the time period. The little pillow, I think they're called pillow top markers. This is my great-great-grandfather, Georgia Monroe Green. He was born January 31st, 1891, and he died July 19th, 1956. Over here is Etta Joiner Green. So she was Etta Mae Joiner. And I know more about her. She was born June 26, 1896, and she died April 27th, 1974. So Etta Mae Joiner, if you've been watching this channel or know anything about me, Etta Mae is the daughter of Shady Joiner. She also very briefly lived in the old house that I own today, what I call the Old Bird Farmhouse. She briefly lived there, maybe for about a year. In her elderly years, she had begun to go what they would call senile, and she had a bit of a hard life in her final years. Georgia Monroe Green had passed away, and Etta Mae was living with her daughter in an old tenant farmer house here in Sumter County, Georgia, and life was getting very tough for them. They were two ladies that were both getting up in age, and they lived in this old tenant farmer house that had begun to get cold during the harsh winters, and they got to the point where they were not able to make ends meet. I believe it was Minnie Jewell, who is my great-grandmother, who wrote a letter to my grandmother asking if she could borrow money for shoes because they had run out of money and the shoes had worn out. And my grandmother said, well, why don't you move in here? And she moved them to, like I said, the house that I own. So it was a hard life. It was a hard life being a rural farmer out here in Sumter County, Georgia. George Monroe had passed on, and my granddad Archie had passed on as well, and just leaving these two, and the farm that they had once been on and were farming on was quickly going away as well. And today, the tenant house that they lived in, that my grandmother also did a lot of living in, is no more. But the house that Etta Mae lived in with my great uncle Horace, that house still stands, and I actually recently visited it, and I hope to return to it to make another update on that. George Monroe Green, if you have watched the Philippi video, he is the son. He is the son of Lily Jordan Green, who is buried out there, who we recently went to visit. But these are my two people that are connected to me here in this cemetery, and we're going to actually clean the graves today. I've brought some D2 with me, so I'm going to clean these off, and because they've got a lot of growth on them. So we'll circle back to that more towards the end of the video. I do want to go ahead and take a look around this cemetery before we do that. There are a mixture of burials out here. Some of the cemetery is starting to feel like it is more so an abandoned cemetery like we would find in the woods. And the leaves are very dry and very loud out here. Let's see, there's Edward A. Allen. He died just a few short days before his birthday. He was born May 27th, 1845, and died May 15th, 1923. See, this grave is more modern. It's been marked in more modern times. Rebecca Wade Ansley was born in 1808 and she died in 1872, but this marker is not from 1872. This is a more modern granite marker, so someone came back and marked her later. Here's Asa Ansley. He was born in 1804 and died in 1884. He's about, 80 years old? I don't know these folks, but it's interesting to see the dates on their graves. Definitely, probably early settlers in this area. So one thing at old cemeteries, you always have to check the woods. We've talked about that quite a bit because there will be forgotten graves in the woods in many of these places. Also, churches that dated back to times before the Civil War often had members who were enslaved, and those members were often buried separately from the white church members, and you often find them in the woods downhill, if such graves exist. Now, unfortunately, I'm not knowledgeable enough about Benevolence Church to know if it dates back to that time period where that would even be a possibility. But I already scouted this area out before I started filming. And the only thing that I saw that gave me pause, aside from a couple spaces that looked like indentions out here, I cannot confirm whether they are or not. I'm super questioning them. The only place that gave me pause was this right here. Now, recently we have seen graves that were marked simply with bulb flowers. In fact, what did we see just a moment ago? A grave marked with bulb flowers. I don't know if that's a grave or not, but it sure does look like it's a grave marked with bulb flowers. So just something to note right there. Otherwise, like I said, other than some depressions in the soil that look like they could or could not be indentions, I didn't see anything out here that just jumped out at me like that and said it's probably a grave. But again, I can't confirm that or not. But we're going to take a look back at the cemetery, see if we can get some dates, if we can find some older death dates too. We might be able to know how old this burial ground is. I'm going to go ahead and focus on these older stones, and I would say that this church definitely dates back to at least 1869. This is our sister, C.A. Ansley, wife of William Felts, born October 9th, 1846, and died February 17th, 1869. Shouldn't live very long. Look at that stone right there. That's a nice obelisk. Actually, this whole view right here with the other obelisk there, all of this is very, very pretty cemetery. If only there wasn't something, messing up the view a little bit. It says our precious mother, Mary J., wife of E.O. Ansley, born January 9th, 1825, died September 25th, 1889. He giveth his beloved sleep. Little brother Albert M., son of Mary J. and E.O. Ansley. He was born March 31st, 1863, and died May 9th, 1872. And L.O. Ansley, born January 23rd, 1827, and died May 10th, 1865. So we're definitely getting pretty old here with the dates, getting back into that era I was talking about earlier. Look at the work right here. And this is T.B. Artope, Macon, Georgia, is the manufacturer or stone carver who made this monument, which is kind of funny because we're not exactly close to Macon, Georgia. And there were stone carvers in nearby Americus, Georgia, which we are very close to. So surprised that came all the way from Macon. This is really interesting right here. This is a box tomb, very old style cemetery fence right here. This is a box tomb with a monument placed on top. And I've seen this before, but not very often. This is another one of the places that got me interested in these old cemeteries because, like I said, I came out here quite a few times as a kid to visit this place with family. And I remember looking at all these old graves back then. It's Georgia. Georgia, son of. Georgia is not a common name for a son of Morgan and Rebecca Hall, born October 28th, 1832, and died November 3rd, 1859. So we're definitely getting old here, which means that this church, or at the very least burial ground, has been here for a very long time. James, son of Francis and Sarah Hall, born October 29th, 1837. Now, there's no death date on here. I don't suppose it would be on the back. No, nothing on the back. So this stone was probably taller. Maybe it broke at one time. But that foundation is concrete, so it's probably newer than that. But I wish we had a death date we could read here. I'm sure it's online, but can't read that now. So this is cool. This marker 1859, probably about the time that this was placed here. Very nice fence too. I would, say that this fence would be from about the same era as well. But it also helps us set a range for burials out here. We know it was pre-Civil War burial site, so it could have an associated African American cemetery. I don't know that for a fact, of course. We've just seen it so many times, it's almost expected at churches of this age and the burial grounds. And those often get even more forgotten than these do because of the limited amount of markers, and they're off in the woods. So I always like to look for them and make sure that if something like that exists, it is documented. It's also interesting to see kind of the evolution in years of markers out here. Is Joel T. Hall, born January 9th, 1834, and died March 9th, 1917. So we've got that raised lettering on this one, which we start to see in that time period. And then it gets into more flat markers later on. Here's Etta Lee Wilder, wife of J.L. Hall, born June 17th, 1868, and died December 17th, 1925. A tender mother and faithful friend. There is an unmarked concrete grave beside her. Here's Sarah Hall, the wife of Francis Hall. Died August 2nd, 1871, age 74 years. And look at that headstone right there. That's a really cool headstone. It's Rachel Hall, wife of William G. Clark, born January 15th, 1832, and died December 3rd, 1895. For as in Adam, all die. For as in Adam, all die. Even so in Christ shall all be made alive. And then we got the finger pointing down with the broken chain. Francis Hall, born June 5th, 1793, died November 24th, 1880. Now this old concrete, this could be about 1880s concrete down here. That is an early form of concrete. You can see the rock that's mixed in with it. And the reason I bring that up is because this headstone faces backwards from what we would usually find. And it's something we've seen, something that we've seen before, where headstones seem to face backwards. But it's interesting it was placed that way because none of the other ones are in here. And so over there, these are early graves or halls as well. We can see that they put this fence up, and it looks like they didn't fence it right here. So just kind of a connection to these other hall burials. And always the briars, everywhere. It's always the briars. I would much rather go out this way though than walking back around. So we're running a little short on daylight here. And we'll make a return trip out here and maybe have to remember the areas of this cemetery that we did not pay as much attention to, that, like that right there. I wanted to just focus on some of these graves that caught my eye, and get some dates. I like this obelisk right here. It still has the urn or whatever that would be called on top. So oftentimes we see those stolen, knocked down, broken. This one still has it. So you can remember all the times that we've seen one that was broken or stolen, and that's what it should have looked like. So this is Sally T. Ogletree, Mary Ella Ogletree, Maddie L. Ogletree. This is probably marking the individual headstones in here. Yeah, it sure is. Dr. A.H. Ogletree, Rebecca F. Ogletree, Tommy L. Ogletree. Let's see, is there anything on the back? No. And maker's mark? Nope. Yeah, so this is just a family obelisk, marks the individual burials in here. Let's look at these tall ones. Well, what is this doing like that? That's a VA issued Confederate marker. It's upside down. I'm gonna have to look at that in a minute. Rebecca Ogletree, born May 15th, 1842, died February 28th, 1894. So this is a tall headstone for 1894. Usually these real tall ones are older. Dr. A. H. Ogletree, born June 8th, 1839, died June 23rd, I believe, 1892. Or he might be the Confederate veteran, but I still don't understand why. It's like they got it and just dropped it out here. This is another one. I had to come around and read that one. I'm going to try. I don't know if I can flip this by myself, but I certainly would like to see why this stone is here. It may be his stone. Maybe he's got two VA issued markers. And this one does have damage down here, so maybe it was, man, that's gonna be too heavy, I think. Yeah. Nope. Can't do it. Not even gonna try. Want to know why that's there though, face down on the ground. It may be for him. Maybe he had two Confederate markers, because I think that's him as well. Maybe they replaced it, or it was damaged in transit, and they just said, "Oh, just toss it in there. It'll be all right." Private Absalom. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. ABSALOMH Ogletree, Company A, 12th Georgia Regiment, CSA, June 8th, 1833 to January 23rd, 1892. CSA on these stones. I'll frequently say Confederate States Army or Confederate States of America. I've used both terms. And someone was correcting me in the comments, and I think their exact words were, "As much as you know." I can't believe that you did not know that stands for Confederate States of America rather than Confederate States Army. But I think the term is pretty interchangeable. You know what I'm talking about, even if I'm not saying what exactly that stands for. But if you look at the VA issued pillow top markers, which look like the ones that are on my people's grave over there, at the bottom of those they say Confederate States Army. So am I wrong? I don't know. Maybe it's just interchangeable. Lots of places say that CSA stands for Confederate States of America though. So I guess that those pillow markers are just real specific with Confederate States Army. In this one, I just want to look at this obelisk. We'll have to come back and look at the individual graves, but this is a very neat, very unique obelisk where it is not on there like we would typically see it. I just noticed this up here. Isn't that amazing? I don't think I've ever seen one of those on top of a marker like this before. I've seen the urns. I haven't seen that. This is T.L. Wilkinson. This is another one that's going to mark all of these people that are in this plot. T.L. Wilkinson, S.M. Wilkinson, S.G. Wilkinson. Our mother, Elizabeth J. Wilkinson. Our father, Lawrence G. Wilkinson. And B.H. Wilkinson. Nothing on that side. So this grave is from 1900. This is Carrie C., wife of S.B. Glaze, born October 1st, 1837, and died February 20th, 1900. Lots of cool engraving on these as well, but unfortunately I'm not going to have the time to look through all of these and clean off my great grandparents' graves over there, because let me tell you, it is getting cold very quickly here. So I'm going to be using the D2 to spray these graves off. I had to go mix that up real quick. I see a water tap on the back of this church, so I'm going to borrow a little bit of water from this church, assuming that tap works, because I forgot to bring water. If it don't work, then we'll just have to come back and I'll just have to spray it and not rinse it. But these should clean up very nicely. So let me get that started and I'll meet you back over there. Y'all go ahead over there. Okay, so I'm going to start here. Etta Mae's grave. I'm just using this little squirt bottle. This should clean up really, really well right before our eyes. This granite is really good about cleaning up. And then I'll have to go borrow some water and give it a rinse. We're just going to rub it in right now. I don't know, it might not clean up right away because I'm not seeing that stuff start lifting yet. And usually that stuff starts lifting right away if it's going to work immediately. So, sometimes this stuff works immediately, sometimes it takes time. It just depends on how much staining and how, what was that? Anyway, how much this stuff is grown on there and set in, I guess. All right, we'll let her stone soak in. And these granite stones they're really durable. Marble is beautiful, but for longevity's sake, you really should go with granite. I've seen these granite stones. These are not very old, but I've seen, older granite stones that they can just look like they were placed there yesterday. And I'm making a decision right now. I'm going to rub this in, brush it in. I'm not going to rinse these today. We are going to go with the true method of just spraying it on, letting it sit, and then we'll come back and see the improvement. For a couple reasons. For one, both of these stones are deeply stained with whatever this growth is. For two, it's cold out here. And I don't really want to play with a bunch of water right now. My hands are already cold enough. Look at that one. That one's already changing color. That means the D2 is already working on it. And the most important reason is it's going to give me a reason to come back down here and see the change. And if they need some more work, we can do that as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to spray them and forget them this time. Be kind of an experiment, Usually we spray them and scrub them and rinse them, and we see a bit of a change. at first, and then, you know, a little bit later, it's like, wow, they look new. But it'd give us a reason to come back down here first and foremost. And there's other stuff that I'd like to take a look at down here that I'm running out of time for today. And it's getting cold. I keep hearing things. I'm not spooky, but I keep hearing things. So folks, I hope you enjoyed this video with me today out here at the old Benevolence Church. It's not quite what I remember, but the building still lives on. I've seen, unfortunately, too many Methodist churches specifically in recent times that are closed, abandoned, or sold. And it's the building itself, the historic buildings, are always in danger when that happens. So at least this one is still being used. Even if there are things that I take issue with happening here, at least the building is still being used, and it'll hopefully continue to stand for many, many years. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I appreciate you visiting or coming to visit these places with me today, and deeply personal places for me. I will come back down here. We'll give you an update on these 2 headstones that I sprayed off, and hopefully we'll visit some more of my family history down here, and just continue documenting, preserving, whether it be my family or others. So again, thank you all for joining me, and we'll see you next time.